Today's show is awesome. You're going to feel so supported and so competent once you listen to this episode with Lisa Fraley, so take notes. As a holistic lawyer, Lisa Fraley blends her legal expertise and her health coaching expertise to help thousands of heart-centered entrepreneurs protect their businesses and brands with contracts, disclaimers, trademarks, and more. Lisa shares her legal love through DIY legal templates, online courses, and one-on-one services, and on stages from British Columbia to the Bellagio. She's uniquely known for aligning legal steps with the chakras. It's wild. You're going to love it. Lisa's mission is to help small business owners understand that the law can be accessible, empowering, loving, and even spiritual. She's a graduate of Case Western Reserve University's School of Law's nationally ranked health law program and holds a certificate in sustainable business strategy from Harvard Business School Online. She's a frequent legal expert on hundreds of webinars and podcasts, taking stage alongside Gabrielle Bernstein, Chris Carr, and many of today's thought leaders. You can catch her on her own podcast, the Legally Enlightened podcast on iTunes, and you can check out her #1 best-selling book, Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul. This is an awesome chat. Take notes. Feel better. Let's welcome Lisa Fraley. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me, Erin and Laura. I'm happy to be here with you both.
We're absolutely pumped. And the reason why we're excited is because the legal space for health coaching is one that honestly derails the efforts of very many well-meaning health entrepreneurs who really have a calling to this line of work, but feel like they're just going to get sued all the time. So you call yourself a holistic lawyer. You have a very interesting sort of collection of skills and practices you bring together. But why don't you start by telling us who you are, how you got started, how you got to where you are today?
Sure. I am sort of like a unicorn in that I am a health coach who actually received training back in 2012. And I'm a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for about 25 years. But these two things came together because after I graduated from health coaching school, so many of my health coaching friends were like, Lisa, we don't know who to talk to. We don't know lawyers who understand health coaching and understand the online space or an online cleanse or whatever. And so can you help us? Or help us figure out who can help us. And I had previously been a healthcare attorney in a large corporate law firm. So right out of law school, I focused on the area of healthcare law. I got that job in the big cushy law firm with the mahogany walls and the cushy paycheck. And of course, I worked like a gazillion hours a day and ended up really with a huge sugar sensitivity, living on candy and M&Ms and Coke and all the things that you shouldn't eat just to try to keep you energized when you're working that many hours. And that's what led me to health coaching school. So my friends who knew I had been a healthcare attorney said, help us. So what I did was I found that so many health coaches were scared, right? They were worried about, they were building this practice and they didn't want to lose their practice. They didn't want to go back to their 9-to-5 job. They didn't want to jeopardize their family. It was scary, right? So I ended up working with lots of holistic health practitioners and creating do-it-yourself legal templates and information and podcasts just to help people know how to help keep themselves safe and reduce risk as a health coach. So I have brought together my legal background with my coaching background to bring sort of the care of the coach with the expertise of a lawyer.
Oh my gosh, I love that. We have so much to talk about and so much to dive into, but what I want to drive home to for people listening is just how impactful it can be to take what you've spent your whole life learning, whether it was related to health coaching or health at all, but being able to use that skill set and that knowledge to be able to help others. And I want to acknowledge you for that, because I think what you do in this space is so beneficial, because the average health coach coming to this has no notion at all whatsoever. And so what a fantastic resource you are. And we're so excited to have you here to kind of let us pick your brain a little bit.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here, and it's always my joy to help health coaches understand how the law protects them in practical ways and energetic ways, and we can talk about that.
I want to dig into just that one statement. You say because I think many people, when they think through the law, they don't think through it in terms of it being there to protect them as well, right? They're automatically thinking, oh, the law is going to be there to hurt me one day. Can you talk to that a little bit about how the law is really there to protect them?
Yes, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Laura, because I think a lot of people, the time when they find a lawyer is after something's gone wrong, right? And they're freaked out and panicked and worried, as they should be, but that's when they find the lawyer. But what I really focus my work and practice on is really helping people on the preventative side. Just like as health coaches, we try to tell people to eat their leafy greens and get their sleep and to drink their lemon water and to eat whole foods. It's the same way with legal protection. There are documents that we'll be talking about and steps that you can take on the front end, one by one, just one at a time as you grow in your business. You don't have to do them all at once, but that can really help you limit your liability on the front end so you don't end up on the back end being sued and having to have a lawyer help you. It's always good to be preventative, and the law and the legal documents are there to support you. Like I always call them a compassionate container to hold and support your business, because it creates that legal structure and those legal boundaries so that you feel free to share your gifts and to do your work and to not hold yourself back and to not be scared and to feel like you can actually go out there and help clients the way that you know that you are meant to do.
Wonderful. I love this. I can't wait to dive into those steps, and we're going to go through them in good detail. It's interesting though, because I remember starting as a personal trainer 20 years ago, and we didn't worry about this stuff. We would give people all kinds of health advice, well out of scope, and not even bat an eyelash about potential litigation or what have you.
Right.
Do you find that the health industry's become more litigious, or what's up with that?
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say that, Erin, because I think what's happened is that as health coaches have grown in number and in visibility, it is another type of professional to help in the health and wellness space that can bump up against some other professions. So, for example, I think registered dietitians are sometimes concerned and want to make sure that health coaches aren't practicing dietetics. And of course, health coaches shouldn't be practicing medicine and bumping up against doctors and don't want to make medical claims. So I think as health coaches have arisen in popularity, people just don't understand what they are and what they do. And it can sometimes bump up against other areas that are legally protected and that have licensure and strict requirements around them. So in the wellness space and the fitness space, and I do actually have my fitness certification as well, believe it or not, I know what you're talking about. And in the fitness space, there's always been a little bit more leeway to talk about nutrition because, of course, a lot of people come to personal trainers or fitness professionals to help them lose weight or to help them obviously reshape their muscles in their body. But the weight loss has always been such a big part of that profession that the nutrition has gone kind of hand in hand with that. But at the same time, personal trainers and fitness professionals still can't be practicing dietetics either. So they can't be recommending foods that will cure or prevent diseases. It's more weight loss that they've been allowed to do.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I own a gym and I see people that come in and inevitably their number one goal is to lose weight, right? Not everyone. And people will come into a gym with the goal to lose weight, thinking that exercise alone is going to get them there. And then, a couple months later, they realize, I've lost a couple of lbs and I feel stronger, but why am I not losing weight, Laura? Well, what have you done with your diet?
Yes, exactly.
Guilty crickets look, right? And so I'm in Illinois, and I don't want to dig into state laws and scope of practice because it's just way too far into the weeds, but just anecdotally here legally, I have to be very careful. I can't put anybody on a diet. And so I've learned to just embrace that and be like, guess what? Aren't you tired of being on a diet? Good news is I'm not going to put you on one, right? And we're just going to talk about how to eat, and we're going to talk about lifestyle behaviors, and I'm going to be here to help guide you through this process. Food is just a part of the equation, right? And we're going to figure this out for you. So, from the standpoint of kind of the litigious, and here's something maybe is even a better question to ask than the one I was going to ask. I hear from people all the time, that they're afraid they're going to get sued. Do you happen to have any anecdotal thoughts on to just what the prevalence of that really is?
Yeah, that's a great question that I get asked a lot too.
Yeah.
And so what's happening in the health coach community is less lawsuits, partly because I've worked with thousands of people who use legal documents to prevent lawsuits on the front end, which is awesome. But also it really has come in the area of investigations by states who are finding health coaches either charging them with operating outside of the scope of practice, whether they are or not is always meant to be proven, but they're coming after people in certain states for operating outside the scope of their practice as a health coach and violating essentially others' scope of practice, usually the registered dietitian practicing dietetics without a license. So it's more the investigative part that really has been in the news and that really has been at the forefront. But lawsuits that would happen or could happen more often will come from clients or people who have taken your supplement protocol or taken supplements as a part of a protocol, and perhaps they weren't the right supplements for them, or they took too many supplements for them and they had a health problem and ended up in the hospital. There have been situations where clients have threatened to sue their health coaches about an overdose of supplements, for example. And again, each case is different and you have to look at the facts of each case to determine whether that person could win or not. But the whole point of what I do is to help people not have to worry as much about being sued. Anyone can sue anyone for any reason in this country. That's one of the gifts and the curses we have as Americans. And all over the world, there are laws that are similar. People can bring lawsuits. It doesn't mean it has legitimacy. It doesn't mean that it has merit. It doesn't mean that they would win, but that's really stressful just to go through a lawsuit. So I want to help health coaches do everything they can on the front end to avoid a lawsuit happening, or heaven forbid if they do, they have the documents and the paperwork to back themselves up so that they can feel more protected and actually be more protected.
Sweet. I can't wait to get into that. But I just want to circle back on one thing. So these investigations that sometimes are launched into coaches operating outside of scope, what tends to be the outcome of that? Like just cease and desist kind of activity, or?
Yeah, it really has varied. There's a couple of different outcomes that I can share with you. So in one case, and I didn't represent any of these people. I don't represent people in this way, but the client had just shared with me what happened. And in one case, she was asked to stop her business entirely, to change the language on her website, and she was issued a $17,000 fine. Now, in her case, it really does happen that it really does happen. Now, in her case, she responded beautifully and immediately and with great deference and did exactly what they asked of her, and she was relieved of that fine, and she was allowed to still practice, but she had to shift the focus of her practice in her state to weight loss rather than holistic health and nutrition, which is what a lot of health coaches don't want to do, weight loss. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. But she knew she needed to do that in order to be able to continue to work in that space. And she did it. And she's now operating totally within the bounds of the law. That's just one example. But it is real. I don't want to overly scare people, but I also want people to know these investigations are real and they are scary and they can happen. I always want to try to infuse you with information so that you feel safe and secure and confident and empowered as to what you can do as a health coach, but you do want to be really careful about what you can't do as well.
Right.
Well, I will tell you anecdotally that I received cease and desist letters because I was, I guess, operating outside of scope, although not really. And now I'm in Canada, so it's a little bit different. But where I live, the province that I live in, the College of Dietitians took control of the word nutritionist and the word registered. So I had gotten a registered holistic nutritionist credential. They took control of the word registered and nutritionist. So I had registered holistic nutritionist on my website and on my LinkedIn and on my social feed because that's what I had. That's what I graduated as, and kind of forgot to change it. And they even went back into my website to blog posts I had written like 4 years ago and said, you use the word nutritionist, you got to take that out. Like they were with a fine tooth comb. And so all I did was change the language and then we're good. We're good now.
That's right.
Like
and
that was
Erin,
it.
the same thing happens here. Nutritionist is a protected term in lots of states here in the US as well. So I'm not surprised to hear that's the case in Canada. And in some cases, you are able to make changes and it all goes away. But in other cases, you may not be that lucky and you may be in a state that's cracking down. And the law changes all the time. And the other thing that changes all the time are the government representatives and the regulations boards who are doing the investigations. So So you could have a period of time where a state is really lax about investigating, and then the administration could change, and in come people who are more focused on investigations. So the idea is to try to even though you were listing your education credentials completely properly from what you had done, sometimes you still want to make sure that you're checking your laws and your provincial laws or your state laws to make sure you know what to do. And Erin, it sounded like you responded to that beautifully.
Yeah, and this just goes to prevention, right? And trying to stay out of the crosshairs and look, don't get me, we, as the director of admissions for a health coaching school, I can tell I get a lot of people coming here that really, they're just trying to find a shortcut to becoming a dietitian or a nutritionist without having to do all the work. Sorry.
Yeah.
You can't do that, right? You're a health coach. Know your state laws, know where you can function in. And to your point, and this is something I want you to try to help make clear for us, there is no legal scope of practice for a health coach anywhere, right? What there is legislation and licensure that relates to other, whether it's a dietitian, nutritionist, doctor, or whatever, that we're not allowed to infringe on. And that's what differs from state to state. So as long as you know that, and quite frankly, as long as you hang your hat on coaching and behavior change, for the most part, you're going to be fine, right? Could you speak to that a little bit about the differences in these laws and where you just really want to be careful?
Yeah. If you come from the approach of coaching and behavior change, and you're really able to prove that that's what you're doing, a lot of it comes down to what you can prove, right, Laura? You can prove that your focus is on behavior change. Where it gets dicey is in some states, the dietetics law says that even the assessment or the education in some cases about nutrition is within the dietetic scope of practice. So each state is so different. Some are really, really, really restrictive, and some are really, really, really lenient. And some states don't even have state laws in the US around dietetics. So you have to know the laws of your specific state. But in general, the idea is exactly what you said. You don't want to be infringing on the scope of practice for a dietitian by practicing dietetics. You don't want to infringe on the scope of practice for a doctor or for any other type of licensed professional, not just doctors, but any type of licensed professional. And you want to stay squarely in what your state statute says that you can do or you can't do. So what I usually tell people is, look, it's our responsibility as individuals to know what your law is, and then you decide how much risk you want to take, but be very informed and very conscious of your state laws so that you can make a decision that's aligned for you and that is honoring the law to the best of your ability.
Wonderful. So, Lisa, you have 7 steps that you work with coaches on. Let's dive into those, shall we?
We shall. I love that. So what I have done is created 7 legal steps that most entrepreneurs need and most health coaches need as they're growing their business. I call them 7 easy steps that are also good for your soul. That's also the name of my book, actually, Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul. And the reason why I have put them in this order and organized them this way is because I actually believe that the law protects you in practical ways that we all think about, right? Using contracts, disclaimers, terms that we're going to talk about. But also, besides having really strong business policies and documents in writing and things that people sign and agree to, on the other side, I believe that the law also protects you and supports you energetically. What I mean by that is when you use legal documents in your business, I can't tell you how many clients have said to me that they have shifted in the way that they show up, the way that they feel more confident, the way that they hold themselves out because they may feel confident and bolstered by their legal documents or their legal entities, and their energy shifts. And I personally believe that the energy you put out into the world and the frequency that you are on is what you attract back as well. So not only are you giving yourself some solid legal language to fall back on, but you also are energetically creating strong boundaries and raising your energetic vibe as well. And that's what I call the spiritual side effect of the law that most lawyers never talk about. And I never would have actually realized had I not been a health coach. So with that in mind, there's 7 legal steps. And so let's talk about the first step. Now, I just want everyone listening to know that it doesn't matter where you are in your business. You might be brand new, you might be 2 or 3 years and have a really rockin' health coaching practice going, or you may be more established and just have never taken these steps. I just want you to know you don't have to take them all at once, but this is a progression that a lot of health coaches go in as they grow in their business. So the first step is that many health coaches at the beginning have a really basic website or a landing page. It may not be an elaborate website. It could just be, one page with your name and bio and contact me for services or something. And that's totally fine. But when you have any website out there that has your name and health coach or wellness coach or whatever you call yourself, you want to make sure you're using a legal document called a website disclaimer. What is that? Basically, it's the document that tells people who you are and what you do and what you don't do. So for example, as health coaches, you want to make sure people know that the information you're sharing is educational, it's informational, that you're not giving medical advice, you're not replacing the advice of their doctor, you're not substituting for their doctor. Any recommendations or suggestions are just that, and they still need to talk to their doctor before they use them. Anything they read on the website is really just to be educational and not to be personalized advice, and so on. You also can include things about testimonials and affiliates as well in that document. So it's a couple pages long, but it's designed to be in the footer of your website so that you have some legal language on your website as your base layer of legal protection. Now, I align this document with the root chakra because it is, first of all, it's just really base level of protection, and it helps you to feel rooted and grounded as you're putting a new website out into the world. Now, I don't know about you, but when I put my first health coaching website out in the world many years ago, it was terrifying. Even as a lawyer, I felt very vulnerable, and it felt scary, and I felt visible, and you want to make sure people are comfortable. So you're comfortable when you put your website out there and that people know what you do. So the website disclaimer aligns with the root chakra, step 1.
Love that. I love that alignment with the root chakra. So thank you for also clarifying that occurs in the footer. So that way it's on every page of your website. Here, just a side question that sprung to mind, because what I'm hearing a lot from new coaches is they're going to business exclusively in social media and not even creating websites anymore, which is crazy to me. But this is kind of like, you kind of hear this language from business coaches, like you don't even need a website anymore, just go out there on social media. So is there some way of doing that within your social platforms?
Yeah, great point, Erin. So if you have a social media platform, whether you have a website or not, I do recommend that you use what I call a mini disclaimer. That's not like a legal, like if you go to a local lawyer, they won't even know what you're talking about. That's just what I call it. It's a small condensed version of the website disclaimer that you still can put on your social media pages. You can put in your Facebook groups. You can do a pin post. You can let people know that when they come to your page or operate in your group, that it's kind of where you set the ground rules and let people know who you are and what you do, and then also how you want them to behave in the group as well. But it's really important to have something in writing that tells people that you're not giving medical advice as a health coach, and to make sure they do talk with their own doctor. There's a couple other things you want to say as well, but that's the gist, because you really don't want to be A, perceived as practicing medicine, and B, you don't want to be practicing medicine, and C, you do still want them to go to their doctor. Even if some health coaches aren't as excited about traditional healthcare and traditional medicine at the moment, my job is to educate you to keep yourself safe. And the way to do that in this moment is to still acknowledge they need to talk to their doctor and medical team, because you are not their doctor and you don't have their full health history and their medical history. And they may be taking supplements or vitamins or medications they're not disclosing to you. So you do want to make sure you have at least the mini disclaimer on your website or social media as well.
Cool.
That's a great question, Erin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So step 2, moving on, whether you have a website or not, the next thing that most people do to get started, because it's so easy, is one-on-one client work, right? In states where you're allowed to do one-on-one client work, the best thing you can do is use a client agreement. Why? Because you want to put all of your client policies in writing and in one place. And, a lot of clients will have said to me, but I'm scared to use a client agreement because, I've had this beautiful, warm discovery call, or I've gotten to know my client at an event, and all of a sudden I'm like, here's a legal document to sign. And that doesn't always feel good. But here's the thing, that I want you to reframe the way you look at a client agreement. And I do actually talk about it in my book as being a gift to the client, because think about this. Think of how many emails come in back and forth from you and your clients. You have all of your policies in one place. Like, what happens if they have to miss a call? What happens if they are late? What happens? Do they get to add time on the end, or do they forfeit that time, right? What happens if they have late payments? What happens if they miss a payment entirely? What happens? What's included in your program, right? What are your expectations of them? How do you want them to show up for you? How do you want them? Do they have to do homework in between, or turn in journal entries, or like, what is it that you actually expect of them to help them be more successful, but also you want to spell that out for them in the document so that they have agreed to it, and you both want to sign the document. Now, the client agreement is also where you have medical disclaimers and limitations of liability, and it's also where if you potentially have a conflict, this is where you include your dispute resolution language. Remember how I said that these documents are designed to be preventative? Here's how, because in the document it actually says, hey, if we have a dispute, here's how we're going to resolve it. And usually I recommend alternative dispute resolution, which is an arbitration, sometimes a mediation, but usually arbitration, rather than just them being able to run off to court and sue you. If they do, you use arbitration, which is a more abbreviated way of coming to a solution for a problem, or sometimes mediation as well. So look how right there in your document, they're already agreeing right up front. Here's my payment policy, here's your refund policy, here's the program description, here are the expectations, here are all my legal terms, and they're agreeing to it with both of you signing it. That's the strongest document you can have, is when both of you sign the document. It's an agreement. You're agreeing to do one thing and they're agreeing to do another thing. So I align the client agreement with the sacral chakra, the second chakra that's right around your hip region where all the good stuff lives. And that is the chakra associated with boundaries and relationships and abundance and creativity and more. So you are really trying to put some boundaries around your client relationship so that you are clear with your expectations and they hopefully will show up for you in the way that you would like them to.
Health Coach Radio listeners, have I got a treat for you. To get 72-hour free trial access to Primal Health Coach Institute and a 50% off coupon code to the How to Become a Health Coach virtual summit featuring video interviews with over 30 industry experts, visit primalhealthcoach.com/HCR today.
So when you're working with clients, because this is a question that come up, we get from our coaches a lot, is, what exactly should be in this agreement, right? What do I need to make sure that I'm mentioning and how? So is that something that you do then when you're working with your clients on, so here's my practice, here's my focus, this is, maybe to stay.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I have do-it-yourself legal documents for all the things that or most of the things we're talking about today. So I have a do-it-yourself client agreement that already is written for health coaches and holistic practitioners with medical disclaimer language and language specific and unique to the work that we do. But in general, to answer your question, you want to make sure you have your program description there, your expectations, your payment policies, your communication policy, how people schedule calls with you, right? What happens if they miss a payment or a late payment? What happens if they miss a call or they're late to a call? What's your refund policy, which is a huge one to put in writing? And your limitations of liability and your disclaimers and your alternative dispute resolution. So it is a thorough contract. And clients will say, but Lisa, this is like 5 pages or something. I don't want to give 5 pages to my client. And I say, here's the deal though. You do want to give 5 pages to your client because it's all in one place and it's how you present it is to how they'll receive it. So if you're presenting it with kindness and love and saying, hey, I've put together for you all of my policies in one place. Here's this agreement so you can see how I'm going to show up for you and how I expect you to show up for me, because this will help you be more successful. Here's the agreement. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me before you sign it. Like, you can be warm and friendly about it, but still have those defined terms in place.
What's really beautiful about it is that it's not just like legal. It's also like the expectations back and forth, client and coach, which softens it and makes it come from a place of kindness and love.
That's right.
I actually have one very specific follow-up question that has always troubled me. The physical signature, like the actual signing, how essential is that?
Okay, let's talk about that. But first, let me tell you, Erin, that I'm one of the few lawyers that puts expectations in the client agreement. That's why I've created it specifically for coaches, because that softens it. And it also does help create the right mindset for them to know how you want them to show up for you. So thanks for mentioning that. I'm glad that makes it more approachable. But to your point, to your question about the signing, and I did do a podcast episode actually that's called do you need to have a signed contract? And my podcast is Legally Enlightened Podcast on iTunes or on my website. You can listen to that. They're 20-minute podcast episodes, 20 minutes or less, because that's about all the legal information people can handle at once. But I like to do them quick and dirty so you can listen on the run. But the gist of your question is okay, there's two ways to execute a client agreement. One is you can literally attach a PDF, email it to someone, have them print it out and sign it, and then email the whole thing back to you. And then you make sure you both have a copy at the end. You can use, that's the old school way, that's tried and true. You just each sign it with a pen, okay? That will never go out of style, most likely for the immediate future. The second way to do it is an electronic signature. But this is a really specific way that it's done, okay? You do want to use an electronic signature program like HelloSign or DocuSign or Adobe Sign or there are a million different choices out there. What you do in that case is you upload the document to that program and you highlight where you want the other people to sign electronically. The program emails it to them. They sign it electronically, the program receives it back, and then you sign it electronically, and then the program sends you both copies. Now, why do you need to use this program, right? People are like, well, why can't I just send a Word document and have their name?
Type their name in or whatever, yeah.
There's no verification or there's no third party sort of verifying on your behalf that this is your signature. Anyone can sign a Word document and mail it back to someone or email it back to someone. There's no way to prove that that was that person's signature. There's no way to prove that it came from that email address. It's just not a reliable, it's easy to poke holes in a signature like that, a typed computer name on a document. So for the client agreement, it is worth it to either do it old school or do an electronic signature. I know it's one extra step and people don't love that, but that's why we have people who help us in our businesses, and our team members can help you with that if you don't have time. And just at the beginning, if you're just starting out as a health coach, you can just do it yourself. It's not that big deal. It takes you 5 minutes. You're done.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna miss something really embarrassing here. My client agreement is a checkbox on my intake form, like check here. But I've also seen other coaches who are using a Google form as their client agreement. It's like, type your confirmation here that you agree to this. But part of me struggles with like needing a signature because it's like, come on, it's 2019 at this point. Why do we need to sign things? But legally, you do need a verified signature. So myself, anybody else who's still kind of half-assing that, time to step up our game.
And Erin, thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure you're not alone. You're not alone. I mean, people think it's a hassle and people don't want to do it for a variety of reasons. And it's understandable. But the other thing that I love about it is that it does often, or at least sometimes, it up-levels your level of professionalism too to your client. Because when they see you doing sort of an official document, they say, oh, now I got to show up for this. I got to really bring my A game, because this is actually serious. And that's what we want them to do, right? We want them to take this coaching seriously and to actually show up and to realize they're going to have to step up, because as we know, when you coach someone, at some point they got to shift something. That's why they're there. That's why they came to you. Yeah. So this is one way to help them up level as well.
And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, how it changes your energy as a practicing coach when you have a real legitimate document that somebody has to like read and sign. And I can absolutely see how the coach and the client would maybe take it a bit more seriously if that really official step was factored in early on.
You got it. That's exactly right. The coach shows up differently, and the client typically shows up differently as well. Mm-hmm. And you guys, the other thing that's so great about it is that when that client gets to that third, fourth, fifth call and they start getting squirmy because now they really have to do the work, right? And they try to back out of their appointments, or they try not to, they don't want to pay, or they're trying to back out, right? Their critter brain kind of kicks in and they freak out a bit. You have that document to say, to let it do the heavy lifting for you. Because it's awkward. I mean, it's awkward sometimes to be like, oh, you haven't paid me and you owe me this money. And you feel weird, and yet you need to tell them that. But it's much more comfortable sometimes to say, you might remember when we first started working together that you signed the client agreement. And the client agreement says right here in section 4 that you're going to make your payments, blah, blah, blah. And that it can help you kind of have an awkward conversation by doing some of that work for you. And you remind them they already agreed to it. So it is harder for them to back out when they've already agreed to it. It reminds them of that promise and commitment that they made.
Yeah. And on that note, we'll move on to number 3, but on that note, that's why I love my invoicing system so much, because if I don't get the payment, I can just send a reminder from the invoicing
exactly.
system. It's like, it's not for me, like having that awkward conversation. It's like, yo,
That's
your
right.
bill is due.
Yeah, that's right. Reminders are awesome, and legal documents can help you not have as many awkward conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. Okay, so after people have started working one-on-one with clients, now we're at step 3, which is basically now you're called a sole proprietor. In many countries, that's what you're called. Sometimes we call it a solopreneur or something like that, or a solo business owner. But basically, you now have 2 responsibilities. One is to register your business locally, and the second is to get clear on your taxes, right? These are the areas that we don't think are a lot of fun typically, but they're important because this is aligned with the 3rd chakra, which is your solar plexus chakra. And that's associated with things like feeling confident and professional and having strong self-esteem and really showing up. I mean, I just sat up taller when I started talking about the solar plexus chakra. And Laura is shared with us, she's helping herself sit taller today as well. And this is something that actually does help you stand a little taller because you are being professional by registering your business locally, usually with your town or your city, sometimes with your state or province, and sometimes also with a county if you have a county government that's particular about that. So each state and city and county is different. So remember, I'm not sharing specific legal advice with you on this call, but I just want you to know and be educated and informed that what you want to do is register your business and let them know that you exist. You sometimes have to file paperwork, pay a small fee, but it does make you official. You get to put your stake in the ground and say that you have a business. And then the second part of that is actually paying your taxes, right? Now, each country and each state has minimums as to what you need to make to be able to pay taxes. And I always, always, always recommend that once you start a business, even if you're a tiny business, that you work with an accountant to help you figure out your taxes. Why is that? First of all, it sets up a great relationship with an accountant right from the beginning so that you don't do it a year later and you've made mistakes and the accountant has to go back and fix them, but also because you're setting yourself off right and in the mindset of I'm a business and I need a professional to help me do this so I do it properly. It keeps you in greater integrity, it keeps your energy clear, and it's usually worth the cost of them because they can often find ways to save you money or to help you with your business deductions and things that you're allowed to take as business deductions off of your taxes in your particular location. So business registration and getting clear on your taxes is step number 3 as a sole practitioner.
Awesome. And
Cool.
you know what? I love the way you just sort of break this down is in just sort of very clear steps, because for so many people, it's about as clear as mud,
Exactly.
no idea. And the good news is you don't have to do this alone. That's why other people have professions. That's why there's attorneys and accountants out there. But it seems so daunting and it seems so
Scary.
intimidating, right? There's just so much. And this, thank you so much for going through this in order with us, because it just makes things so much clearer and step by step. And okay, boom, got my website, got my disclaimer, check the box. Let's move on to the next thing.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Laura. Well, that is exactly why I wrote my book, Easy Legal Steps, right? That's why I started the podcast, because so many people were like, I don't understand a privacy policy. Can you just explain it to me in 5 seconds? And I'm like, great. Yes, I sure can. It's right here, episode on my podcast. And then that's also why I created the do-it-yourself legal templates, because I wanted to create templates in plain English that are easy to understand. They actually use color in the documents that align with the chakras, which is like
That's awesome.
shocking for a lawyer. God forbid you put color in your legal documents. It makes it more inviting and comfortable for health coaches to use, especially if they've not used a lot of contracts in their work previously, or they feel like it might be cold. This warms it up. It makes it a little more feminine and a little bit more comfortable, but yet it's still got legally binding language in it. So it's protecting you. But that's exactly why, Laura, because I don't want people to be scared and I don't want people to hold themselves back, and I want people to feel safe, and because you have people to help out there. They need you. They need you to help them have a healthier and happier lifestyle. So anything I can do that helps people get out of the fear and get into the action is exactly why I do what I do.
You mentioned registering your business locally, and I think a lot of people have asked, well, I'm not working locally. I'm an online virtual coach, so why bother? So this is more about taxation though, correct?
Yeah, well, it's also about anytime you have a business, you do actually have to have a principal place of business. Like you do need to declare a place of business as to where you're located, especially as you grow, partly for tax purposes, partly for regulations. Like most cities and states and counties have laws around if you have a home-based business or if you have a business. Some states require that you tell them how you dispose of your waste, and some cities say that you need to file specific paperwork if you're a home-based business. So like there's laws out there about how to have a local business, and you want to make sure you're complying with those laws, partly because it's the law, but partly because you want to be in integrity. So even if your clients are all over the world, you will have a home base. It's usually the state or county or province or city or whatever where you're primarily based, right? And the one that you typically use for your own residence taxes, typically, not always, but typically. And so that makes it really easy. You can work with clients everywhere, but you still have a home base. And I did do a podcast episode on, do I need to register my business? And that goes into greater detail about that as well.
That's awesome. So I have a kind of a follow-up question to that, a couple of them. So for folks who, because this has come up for me twice now in 3 years, so not often, but folks who kind of live, they either spend time in two different states or they're kind of on the border and one state is just legally a little better than the other. I heard you say typically, but not always. So is it legal? Can you actually register your business in a different state, particularly if you're an online business maybe?
Yeah.
But actually you live in another state. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And I do have another podcast episode about what if I work with clients around the world, and that will address that too. But yes, so you can have a business in a different state as long as you have an address for your business in that state. So you can't just like live 5 minutes away from the next state and then just have your business registered. You need to have a location, an address, something, it's called the nexus that connects you to that state. Whether it's a physical address, it needs to be a physical address. So it can't be a post office box, right? But you can have a business in a different state and live in a different state. That's perfectly fine. People do that all the time. There's a gazillion businesses registered in Delaware where people live other places. But at the same time, you definitely want to have an accountant help you, because there are laws that say you might need to register as a foreign business in your state. It affects your taxes. Sometimes you have to pay taxes in both states. It gets complicated, and it could potentially be more expensive. Just know that. But if that's something that you're comfortable with or willing to investigate, sometimes that can be an option for people. But please make sure you talk with a lawyer and accountant before you do that.
Yeah, because so for example, what if we have somebody who lives in, say, Illinois, like myself, but the neighboring state of Indiana is actually a better state legally for health coaching. So someone in that instance, you would have to have either a physical location or some sort of workspace location or something that ties you to that state in order to be able to legally function in that state. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Got it. Awesome.
Cool.
And then so how do you suggest people tackle this? So, because again, selfish question, I'm currently in Illinois, but I'm going to move in about a year to another state.
Great.
So now the state laws are all going to be different. How much of what we do is going to be applicable, or what you do, right? And what you're coaching people through how to do is going to be applicable regardless of where they live, and then some changes.
Yeah. So the legal documents, like the do-it-yourself legal templates, what I found was that people were going to a local lawyer and then coming to me and saying, can we make this work for health coaching or for online? And that was difficult to do, partly because traditional legal documents are very traditional, right? The languaging is heretofore and wheretofore, and like the way that we don't want to talk often as health coaches. And also it was expensive. It was expensive to edit the documents. So I said, let's do it the other way around. Let me create for you a do-it-yourself legal template with language in it that's designed for health coaches. And then you complete it and take it to your local lawyer to be reviewed to make sure it's not conflicting with any of your local laws. It'll be much easier and typically less expensive for you to do it that way. So that's how that started. But to answer your question too, Laura, about if you want to move to another state, like how does that work? So laws change all the time.
Right.
So if there's anything I can do to empower you listening, is that to understand that It is part of our responsibility as a business owner, as a health coach, and by the way, every other profession as well, to know the laws where they're located, right? Doctors have to know their laws. Contractors have to know their laws. People who sell houses have to know the laws. Like, everybody has to know their state law. So this is not like something that should be surprising to you, right? So what will happen is, Laura, if you're thinking of a state to go to, you can look for states where right now the law is more permissive. It doesn't mean it won't change, but typically the laws follow politics a little bit. I hate to say that, but they kind of do. So the the Northeast and the whole West Coast and part of the Wild West South are all more open states typically, and the Midwest typically and the heart of the South typically are more conservative states. So it kind of follows political lines if you think of it that way, but you can look for a state to move to where the laws are more permissive for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Okay. Heart chakra. Let's go.
Heart chakra. Moving on. Okay. Heart chakra. Now we're back to the website. By now, if you have a website, you're building out your website. You're adding blog posts and quizzes and podcast episodes and videos and all kinds of guest experts. I mean, you might be building out your website, sales pages. Your website can get much larger. So you have a lot of content that you've now created for your website. Text and images and your branding and your logo and your colors and like everything about that website that makes it yours and uniquely yours. So there's two documents that I align with the heart chakra because the website is the heart and soul of your brand. And I actually personally do recommend that people have a website, even a simple website, because that's a visual representation of who you are. But at the same time, you want to make sure you're protecting that content. So the first document that you use with this chakra is the website terms and conditions. Now, this is a more elaborate document than the website disclaimer, and it also is very specific about how people can use your intellectual property. What's intellectual property? All the things we just talked about. Your logo, your words, your text, your images, everything on your website. So this is about the information on the website. Remember, back in step 1, we were talking about who you are and what you do and your role for the website disclaimer primarily. This is about protecting the content. So if someone comes along, and unfortunately it happens more than I would like, and someone swipes your website content or copies your image or copies your sales page, and someone's even copied someone else's bio before, which is, wow. You want to make sure you have website terms and conditions which say, hey, you can come to my website and view my website, but you can't take, copy, steal, borrow any of this content without my permission. It does other things as well, but that's sort of its main role, is to protect your content. And it's up to you as the business owner to actually have that. Because clients will say to me, well, Lisa, don't people know that if I create a website, it's my content? And I'm like, you would think so, but that's not the way the law works. The law works where you have to tell people how they can use the content and you have to claim it as yours. So the website terms and conditions helps protect your content from other people coming to your site. Do you want to talk about that before we go to the second document?
I do have a question about that.
Okay.
Or an anecdote maybe.
Okay.
But some web content that I created, I want to say it was like 6 years ago. I just read it verbatim in somebody's book. And I feel like I wrote it from scratch and it showed up in somebody's book. Now, but I don't know that it was taken from me. It could have just be that the author of that book had the same idea that I had, right? But so it's like, how do you handle that kind of gray area stuff? Like, should I reach out? I don't even have website terms and conditions, so I don't have a leg to stand on legally, but it was interesting. Like, I didn't think it was going to happen to me, and it did.
Oh, and first and foremost, my heart just goes out to you because there's nothing worse when people copy us. I've been copied before too, even with website terms and conditions. People just do it. Sometimes sometimes they do it innocently, like they might have been inspired by your work and sort of forgotten that you created it.
It's called kleptomnesia.
Yeah, they do. But some people are truly horrified, like, oh my goodness, they'll say I copied it for inspiration and came back later and kind of thought I wrote it. I mean, they really are horrified and they're immediately taking everything down and would be mortified to know they copied you. Other people are like, nah, I just took your stuff. Like they don't care, which is the unfortunate part. So I don't know if you guys have read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which is a book I love. Have you read it? No? Well, in the book, she talks about how sometimes like ideas, and you may or may not subscribe to this philosophy, but ideas can belong to the collective consciousness. And sometimes they're sort of downloaded to someone. And if someone doesn't act on it, it can go to someone else. Or sometimes two people can have the same idea. And to that end, I had 2 clients who came up with a program name. They were in totally different worlds, like hardcore business coach and like spiritual guru, the exact same business name. So, and I was floored. Like I never in a million years would have thought they would have, and it was a unique name. It wasn't something obvious. So in that case, Erin, it's hard to know. You can always reach out in kindness first is what I recommend. Because I do come from legal love. I do try to come from a kind place first, because you can always get harsher with the law, but you really want to come from a place of how would you wish to be treated if that happened to you, and start there, right? Just to be a kind person. So you could say, hey, I noticed that this looks very similar to the language that was on my website. And I just am wondering if you realize that, or if you took it from my website, and if you did, could you please delete it? And sometimes people will be horrified, and sometimes people will ignore you. So you could issue a cease and desist letter if you do have a leg to stand on to get them to take it down. And there's some other things you can do around the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and around copyright rights. But having the website terms and conditions is the first place to start for contractual. It's like a one-sided contract, essentially, is what it is. Have the contractual backing if you have someone steal your stuff from your site.
I'm on it. That's the next thing I'm going to do after I get off this podcast. I'm going to write my website terms and conditions.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the second legal document associated with the heart chakra is one that actually protects your client's information or your website visitors' information. And that's the privacy policy. Now, a year ago, you might have heard a lot of hubbub all around the internet about the GDPR, which is the General Data Privacy Regulations that came out that affected the European Union and some other European countries. But it actually affects you as a health coach, no matter where you're located, if you have clients in those countries, or if you have clients who go visit their countries, and if they're sitting in that country and they log on to your website and join your list, now they're covered by that law. So what we said, the safest thing to do for health coaches who work with people everywhere is to have a privacy policy that's GDPR compliant. And basically what it's doing is it's telling people what their privacy rights are in terms of being able to correct data if it's incorrect, be able to tell you to stop holding their data anymore. It's very elaborate, but protects the confidentiality of their information and really tells you how to honor their information. So the privacy policy is critical, especially if you have an opt-in box, you're inviting people to join your list, people are commenting on your blog posts, any interaction that they have with you and your website, you want to have a privacy policy. Also in the footer of your website, that's also where the website terms and conditions live. So most websites should say disclaimer at the bottom, website terms and conditions, and privacy policy. And then you'll be covered with your 3 legal documents that will give you some protection.
Awesome.
It's a big footer.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, this is all about kind of preventing this stuff. I mean, personally, if somebody takes the time to go through my website and steal my shit, I'm just going to be like, oh, they totally stole my stuff. They must have thought that was awesome. But at some point, that's going to be a problem. So let's get ahead of
And
that.
everyone responds differently, Laura. So in your case, you may not care or be bothered in that moment. But the other reason why I do encourage having the document is because you are creating that energetic container around your work. You are basically declaring, this is my work. And sometimes when we do that, I believe that it also creates some lines for people to not be as prone to come and get it. Because sometimes when people come and take our work, sometimes I like to say it's the universe knocking, like tapping us on the shoulder, say, hello, good things are coming for you. You're going to get bigger. Good things are happening, but you need to kind of tighten up this little boundary right here before we go to that next phase. Yeah. And you're having a little leak here, a money leak or an energy leak or a time leak or a content leak. So let's just tighten it up before you go forward. So sometimes when that happens, it's just a reminder of us to review the policies and actually like claim the work that we're doing as ours.
Yeah.
I have in my footer the little C with the circle, copyright 2019. Is that pointless?
No, that's not pointless. That's a whole other area of the law, not in our 7 steps, but let me just address that really quickly since you brought it up. So copyright law, okay, so the website terms and conditions and the privacy policy and the website disclaimer, that all falls under contract law. These are they're one-sided contracts essentially. Like these are my legal terms. This is my one-sided contract that by being on my website, you're agreeing to. They don't have to check a box for this one. By being on the website, you're agreeing to this. Okay, copyright law is an entirely different area of the law that's based in federal law. And so what that means is that you have rights. It's also based in common law, but you have rights basically saying that if you're the original creator of that content, you can claim it as yours. So you can, by putting the C with the 2019, you're claiming it to be yours. So if someone else came along and said, hey, that's my work, you would be able to have proof that you've been using it since whatever that date was. So that's one reason to do it. The second reason is that you can file a federal copyright with your federal government to protect an original creative work that's usually fixed, which means that it doesn't change. So if you think back to high school, like remember how you used like the biology textbook that was like the 14th edition, right? What that means is that the author copyrighted the book, but every time they changed it, they had to do a derivative copyright or a second copyright, depending on how they did it. And that's why it keeps being copyrighted. So for websites, copyright protection isn't ideal because we change our websites all the freaking time. And so it would be harder for you to prove that your content was fixed because it changes a lot. That's why you want the website terms and conditions, because that's a contractual area of the law, but they both can be helpful to you.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying that.
Legal lessons. And I talk about copyrights in podcasts too, because these questions come up all the time and I want people to feel empowered knowing about them. And I get excited teaching you these little mini legal lessons so you can feel empowered to have the information and go forward.
It is incredibly empowering.
I know. And people don't think this about the law, right? They don't think of it as exciting and empowering. And it's something that actually helps you relax and feel more peace of mind and feel more confident and comfortable as a business owner. And that's the whole point of the law, in my opinion, to keep you safe and protected on the front end as much as possible. It's not 100%, but it's as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when I uncovered that my little piece of content had shown up in this print book, I was like, but it says copyright on my website. And then I was like, but that was digital content. I could have created that at any time. Like, there's literally no way for me to prove,
That's a good point, because with the law, and unfortunately, right, people always say, oh, it's not about the truth. Well, it's about what you can prove. And it's just the way it is, because that's the only way you can do it. That's why we have witnesses in court cases who say that so-and-so said something, because it's hard to prove someone said something unless you have people say, yep, I heard him say it. Yep, I heard him say it. Yep, I heard him say it. And with written documents, we have to have the proof to show it. So that's why I do recommend the legal documents, because you have the thing in writing. You have something in writing to fall back on. Yeah, but you're right, Erin. I mean, each situation's different, and it's always up to you as a business owner to decide whether to go after someone or not. That's always your choice. You are empowered to do whatever you wish, but I want you to have the tools in case you do want to go after someone. Then you have the information you need.
Awesome.
Okay, moving on to step 5. 5, throat chakra now, right? So guess what? We look at what you have done now. You have a website, basic website. You've got one-on-one clients. You are registered as a business owner, and you've gotten clear on your taxes. You've built out your website. You're really expanding your presence. Now, most likely, you might be going one-to-many. You might be creating online courses or group programs or digital products, or maybe you have physical products like DVDs or journals or candles or whatever that goes with your health coaching business. And what's happening now as you go one-to-many is you're spreading your message farther and wider. Communication is associated with the throat chakra. Messaging is associated with the throat chakra. And so now you use a document that I call terms of use. Terms of use. Why do I call it that? Because this tells people how they can use your group program and online program and mastermind and membership and all the things that you create. These can also be called terms of service. But what's tricky about legal documents is that they're all kind of legal terms. So I try to give them unique names so you can remember which goes with which. This is a document where you do use a checkbox, okay? Remember the website documents, no checkboxes involved. They just live in the footer of your website. But this is the document that you put in your shopping cart when someone is buying your program. So we've all done this a million times, right? When you signed up to work with your health coach training program, you probably agreed to their terms, and I sure hope that you did. But basically, in the back end of your shopping cart, there's a place for the legal terms, and that's where you put these terms. Now, this is a long document. This is the biggest, longest freaking legal document there is that I've developed, because there's a lot that goes into online purchases and online courses. And unfortunately, believe it or not, it's the online course content that's usually taken more than the one-on-one content, right? Because you have a greater loyalty typically to your one-on-one coach, or your clients may feel a greater loyalty to you. But with group programs and online courses, you have all kinds of people who are out there taking the information and using it in their practices in an appropriate way, but some people in an inappropriate way. So in this document, you cover lots of things like online commerce and your refund policy and communication and all kinds of disclaimers, not just medical disclaimers, but now you have security disclaimers and warranty disclaimers and technology disclaimers, because you can't guarantee that your computer's not going to get hacked or their computer's not going to get hacked. So this is a very elaborate document, but that's okay, because when you need that language, it's there for you. And people will say, but Lisa, what if people don't read these terms?
Right.
You create this beautiful document, but like, what if people don't read? They just check the box and go on. Well, we know most people do that. We do know that. And I have a lighted ampersand marquee on my wall, like that represents I'm a health coach and a lawyer, and law is energetic and practical. And in this case, the thing is, these terms are there for your client awareness, obviously, and they're more so there for you to protect your work. Right? There's intellectual property language, there's payment language, there's commerce language. There's also language of how you want people to behave. So if it is a group program, you want to make sure people aren't harassing other people in the group. It tells you how you can terminate people from the group. And the terms of use are written in such a way that you can use them with all of your online programs or products. You might have to tweak them a little bit if you have a different refund policy for each program. But other than that, they're designed to kind of apply to everything that you're doing online, because a lot of shopping carts only allow you to put one version of the terms of use in the shopping cart program. So it's a one size fits all in a lot of ways, but you'll be glad you have it if someone is taking your stuff or wants a refund, or you need to remove them from the program because they're disruptive. You have that language there.
Another thing I have to do. My to-do list just got way longer.
I know, me too.
Well, remember, I don't want you to get overwhelmed. You just go one step at a time. One step at a time. I do have some packages that pull these together, like a website protection with the terms of use. There's a legal starter kit for health coaches doing group programs. The website documents with the client agreement. There's a legal starter kit for that. So you can find things on my website at lisafraley.com that will work for you. And you can do payment plans, because I charge like a health coach, not like a lawyer. So, the goal is to not make it hard or make it expensive or make it difficult. We want you to just take the steps one at a time as you go.
Awesome.
Thank you, by the way.
No pressure on yourself. No, my pleasure. That's why, you can hopefully feel my passion of why I do this, because I want you to be able to go out and help people in their lives and help them change their lives. And you need to feel safe when you do that. That's the deal.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, sixth chakra. Here we go. We have two left, two main chakras left. So the sixth chakra is the third eye chakra, and that is aligned with intuition. So I always like to say, you always know when it's time to go pro by now creating a business entity. Okay, this is where you create things like LLCs and S Corps in the United States. In Canada, you would create perhaps like a limited corporation, a limited partnership. In other countries, they have different names, but basically you're creating either a corporation or a limited liability company. And why would you want to do that, right? So in most cases, the reason why you do it is because you now have a lot of assets. You might have had a lot of personal assets at the beginning of opening up your practice, like your house is paid off and your cars are paid off, or you have a vacation home or savings accounts or insurance proceeds or whatever. But I know a lot of people are taking their savings and putting it into their health coaching business and their health coaching training programs and their website and all the things that we need to be a health coach. So usually for most people, now is the time when they would form an LLC or S Corp, because now they're making money in their business from all their programs and products and services. So what happens is when you create that limited company, corporation, limited liability company, whatever, you are now separating yourself from your business legally, which means you are you personally and individually, and your business is your business. And that means that if someone, generally speaking, there are always exceptions, but generally, if someone tries to sue you in your personal life or come after you, they can't get your business assets. And if someone comes after you in your business for some reason, they can't get your house and your car and your vacation home, generally speaking. So the idea is to limit your liability. The other thing that it does that's very helpful is that if you're acting in the best interest of your company and you make a business decision that ends up not being super great, like maybe you purchase some supplies for a company and they go bankrupt and they don't follow through, you can't be personally liable for a decision that you made to benefit your company if you're acting in your role, your official role with your company, and if you're doing it in good faith and in the best interest of the company. So that bad business decisions or things that go wrong that you weren't expecting, you can't be personally held liable and have to like sacrifice your house or your car to pay for it. That's really important because as your business grows, you might be expanding and doing joint ventures or partnering with people to create courses or showing up as guest lecturers. And I mean, there's all kinds of things that you might be doing, and that limits your liability. So this is a step I definitely recommend that you talk with a lawyer to either help you do it or before you do it, because you want to make sure you're picking the right entity, and there's several steps that you have to take depending on which entity that you pick. So I do podcast episodes on what's an LLC and when do I need an S Corp and what do I need to know if I have an LLC. That I have a couple podcast episodes about corporations, and also my book. There's a chapter in the book if you want in-depth information, but I really don't want to put you to sleep with the corporate entity part. That's like business law 101.
Yeah, sorry. There you go.
But hopefully at this point, if you are sensing I need to protect myself in a bigger way, that you do honor that and think about creating a corporate entity. So that's step number 6.
Cool.
Ready for the last one?
Let's have it.
Yep.
Step 7, this is the crown chakra, and this is the step of trademarking. Now, I like to say trademarking is a crowning achievement for a health coach or an entrepreneur because you are now claiming your brand. Okay. Do you remember a little bit ago? I know we've been talking about a lot of legal things, but remember we were talking about copyright, and Erin was asking about the little C on the bottom of her website. That's copyright law that protects original work. Okay. This is another area of the law that has to do with things that you create, and this is trademarking law, but this has to do with your brand, which means it has to do with marketing purposes, right? And it's for small things like logos, program names, business names, taglines, things that you use to identify yourself as a brand, right? We all know like Nike is just do it is their logo, their tagline and their logo. And we know the Lululemon symbol because we love Canada and Canadian companies, and we went on our honeymoon back in 2006 in Canada, in Whistler, and loved it then and still love it now. But that's a logo, right, that they would trademark. Trademarking's done at the national level, okay? It's done with your own country. Now, the reason for that is because even though we live in this huge global universe now, remember it was only like 30 years ago that we actually even had the internet being used in any real way. So for a couple hundred years, people's brands were local, right? So you didn't have to worry about a company across the ocean using the same brand as you. So the trademark law is still kind of archaic, kind of like the health coaching state laws that we were talking about earlier, because we have changed how we operate as human beings, but the laws have not caught up yet. So trademarking you do with your own country. Now, in the US, you get a trademark for 10 years and you can renew it over and over again for 10-year periods. Each country is slightly different. And I do trademarks for clients. I've done over 70 successful trademarks. I've worked with an international trademark attorney to do Canadian trademarks or European trademarks. So there are ways to get that accomplished. But the idea is that you're now claiming your brand as your own. And what happens when you get a registered trademark is you're now the presumed rightful owner of the work, of that brand. So that means that the other person has to prove that you are not the rightful owner of that brand. That's how it really protects you. It's also an asset. It becomes an asset that you can sell. Like, if you guys have watched Shark Tank or Dragon's Den in Canada, right? They're always asking, like, do you have a patent? Do you have a trademark? They're always asking, do you own the brand? And the reason why they're asking that is because it has value, or it can have value that you can sell as an asset. So that's another reason why people will trademark. A little tip for you guys, if you are thinking if you have a program name that you love, or a logo that you love, or a brand name that you love, you can put the little TM after it, which means that you're just sort of claiming it as yours, okay? It's not until you file a trademark application and that you receive registration that you do the R with the circle around it. Now everywhere you go, some companies use it incorrectly. They still use a TM when I know that it's registered and they should be using the R with the circle around it. But now you're going to notice when people have a TM versus an R, and the R stands for registered trademark after it's granted. Cool.
So let's say you're starting out as a health coach and you come up with this business name, you come up with this program name, you love it, you never bothered to do a name search to see if anybody else in the world is using it. And let's say, hypothetically, 7 years have gone by and you still haven't done that, but now you want to go ahead and trademark yourself. What if you try to do that, but somebody else has already trademarked the thing that you like? You have to go back to the drawing board?
So good point. So if you're starting out, one of the things that you want to do is often, not because Erin's a little farther down the road, but what you want to do theoretically is to have a trademark search done to make sure that you're not infringing on someone else's registered trademark already. If you're in a situation like you just described, Erin, where it's like 7 years later and you're still using the name and you're wondering, am I infringing on someone's trademark that they've registered, you can have a trademark search done, preferably by a lawyer. And the reason for that is because trademark offices look for names that are not just exactly the same, but that are substantially the same from a legal perspective as to whether or not they cause confusion in the marketplace. So it's a legal analysis of whether the names are similar. You could think they're really different, but the law could say, no, they're not that different. But if it's 7 years later, you can still do a trademark search now, Erin. And so what happens is, let's pretend, just for pretend, that Erin did a trademark search with a lawyer and the results showed that someone else has a very similar name and in the very similar space of health and wellness, let's say. A couple things can happen. One, Erin could continue, or this person could continue to decide using the name, understanding there's a risk that that other company could come issue a cease and desist order and tell her to stop using the name. Number two, Erin could continue using the name. The other company could contact her and they could work out a plan to both coexist using the brand names if they're not exactly the same. So that's an option. Or third, if the company came and issued a cease and desist and they didn't back down, then Erin might have to change the name of her company. So you can coexist with other companies as long as it's agreed to by the parties. So for example, and I can share this because it's public, but I had a client who is a spiritual coach who uses the word absolute in her brand name. And it's all spelled out, ABSOLUTE. Well, when we were filing the trademark application for the absolute in this spiritual space, we got an objection from Absolute Vodka.
Oh.
Even though Absolute Vodka does not have an E on the end, right? ABSOLUT.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect example of how it doesn't even have to be in the same space. It doesn't have to be the same area, but you can have a potential conflict. So what happened was we were able to work with the attorneys for Absolute Vodka and come to an agreement that my client could go forward using the word absolute with her in her spiritual space, so long as she did not add to her business beverages, cups, mugs, whatever paraphernalia that you would use in the drink category, shot glass, like none of the things that have to do with drinking alcohol or drinking anything, quite frankly. And she was like, that's cool. I have no interest in that. I mean, sure, it'd be fun to have a coffee mug with my logo on it, but I don't need to have a coffee mug to sell with my logo on it. I can live without that. So the Absolute lawyers said, okay, great. Then we're not going to object and you can go forward. And we have a written agreement that says everybody's cool. And she was allowed to go forward. So it is a serious thing to think about, but there are lots of options that can happen. But I'm glad you mentioned that, Erin, because I think there are a lot of people in that situation who are wondering. But if you have a name that you love and you've been using it for a long time and it's your brand and your heart and your soul, then it's worth thinking about trademarking it so that at least you have the rights afforded to you under the federal legislation that you would not have otherwise.
Well, and to come full circle, like if I had stepped into my business 7 years ago following these 7 steps and really just like stepping into the, understanding some of my legal needs and rights and things like that, I wouldn't be 7 years down the line wondering if I should have done this 7 years ago. But so it's just another just sort of check in the column of like, get this stuff done now, early. Yeah. It's not too early to start this stuff. Might as well, right?
Totally. And to that point, Erin, like I really love how candid you are in sharing your specific legal situation. That's courageous and generous of you to do that for everyone so they can see, maybe I'm not alone in this. But just like when you work with your health coaching clients, we don't judge where people are. Like I always say, like, I'm not the legal police. I'm not judging you. It can feel embarrassing. Like if you go to your accountant and you're like, here's my financial history. Can you help me? People do that with law. They're like, oh, I should have done this like a million years. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, I'm glad you're here now. And just like with your health coaching client who's like, I've eaten potato chips on the couch for 3 o'clock for 10 years. Like, I'm mortified. Like, no. Today is perfect. We accept you today and we just move forward from here, right? Just like you do with a personal trainer or owning a gym, or you just take your client where they are and help them go forward. So no judgment, no shame, just this is new information for a lot of people, and it's great to feel hopefully more confident and empowered knowing this, so you know what steps to take so you can go forward.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I have a question. So for brand new coaches, from someone who really understands this legal space, is there anything on this list that you think a coach should have in place before they take their first client?
Yes, and that would be their client agreement. If it's their first client with one-on-one work, have your client agreement ready before your first client. And by the way, you want to have your client agreement signed before your first call with your client, your first paid call with your client. Mm-hmm. The reason for that, you want that client agreement to be part of your enrollment process, and you want to have that container to hold all of your client policies ready to go. I always look at it as a container for the client to land, like a place for the client to land, or like the gymnast, right? Vaulting and having the mat on the other side to land, so that they know where to go and they know you're ready to hold and receive them, and you're already clear about what's going to happen when they get to you. So please, if you're the first step, if you're working with your first client, you have and use your client agreement and have that ready to go.
Wonderful. I have a question about the sort of end, like later on. So
yeah, great.
Let's say you take on some clients and you've got a little successful business going and you want to start using testimonials in your marketing efforts from your clients, actual client testimonials, whether it's text or them on a video. I'd like to get some video testimonials from my clients. Great. Is there a release form I need to have?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. You'll be hopefully happy to know I have over 30 do-it-yourself legal templates that people need for different reasons. You don't need all of them, don't worry. But one of them is a DIY testimonial release. And the reason why you want to use that is so that you're very clear with your client how you're going to use their content. So for example, if you have a fabulous client you want to feature on your website, you would make sure the testimonial release has their name and it says, I'd really love to get a video from you to use on my website. Because there have been situations where coaches have asked for client testimonials to use on their website, and then 3 months later it shows up on social media and the client has been horrified. Because maybe they were comfortable with having it on a website, but they were not comfortable having it out in social media. And I mean, I've had a health coach threaten to be sued by a client for breaching her confidentiality and her privacy because she felt very vulnerable. I think she had a vulnerability hangover after sharing that very deep testimonial. And she was fine with it being used on the website because it felt like a more closed space, but not on social media that could just come up in someone's feed. So just be very specific and if you think you're going to use it in social media in the future, then ask now to use it on your website or social media or sales page or future programs. Like you can include all of that in there.
Okay, great. I feel so smart now. I feel way smarter than I did like an hour ago.
Well, and I feel more empowered too. And I also feel supported by you, Lisa. Like knowing that I can go to lisafraley.com and look for some sort of DIY, something to get started is tremendous, because the whole idea of just trying to do this myself or hiring an attorney here that might not know anything about my business or what I need to know and just flailing around, not even knowing where to start. I just think it's such a tremendous resource. And I thank you so much for everything you've shared today. There's been so much information. I've got pages and pages of notes here. And I hope everybody listening takes away from, you don't have to know all this. That's why people like Lisa exist and other attorneys. And there is a place to go, and there's a resource, and there's help out here. And you can do this one step at a time, right? You don't have to have all these 7 steps done before you launch. The first thing you do is your client agreement. Right?
Exactly. And thank you, Laura. That's so nice of you to say, but that's exactly why I do this, because I don't, like I've said, I don't want people to be scared and overwhelmed, and you can just go one step at a time. That's why the book is called Easy Legal Steps. And that's why I have the podcast with 80 episodes talking about various aspects of the law so that people can get little snippets of information and not be overwhelmed. We are all empowered when we learn new information, and we just have to pace ourselves. It's just like growing a business, right? You don't grow your entire business overnight. You do it step by step, day after day, consistently. The same is true with the legal part. You just look at where you are now, figure out what you need, and then when you're ready for the next thing, like you say, I'm going to launch an online program in 6 months, I probably need to get terms of use, and you want to get those in place before you launch that program. You just go step by step by step as you grow. And the important part is that you're now aware of the law, you're aware of the legal part. Hopefully it feels more comfortable. It doesn't feel as overwhelming, and you know that you can just do it one step at a time.
Awesome. Absolute gratitude. All right, Lisa, lay it on us. Tell us where we can find you, the podcast, the book, the website.
Sure. So my website is lisafraley.com, which is LISAFRALEY.com. And there you'll find links to the podcast. So you can just click on podcasts and you'll get the podcast page. You can find under services, or I think it's called services, do-it-yourself legal templates, and you'll find all the templates. My book, you'll also find that on my website as well under services. You can order the book. You can also get it on Amazon. And the podcast is also available on iTunes. You can subscribe there. But basically, the website is the hub for everything. I do have social media, but just go to the website, check it out. If you have any questions at all, you all are welcome to have a free 20-minute legal chat with my team. And you can sign up for that at lisafraley.com/legal chat.
Awesome.
So if you have questions, either we can tell you that we can help you, we will refer you to another attorney if we can't, but it will just give you some comfort in knowing you can actually talk to someone for free, and it will be a member of my team, but we'll be able to help you, point you in the right direction.
Awesome.
Awesome. This has been the most comfortable, fun, like relaxing legal conversation I've ever had. So again,
Yay,
absolute gratitude.
so
Thank
cool.
you so much, Liz.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Laura, so much for making this so easy and fun, and to give this great space to be able to hold this conversation, and for all the work that you do too. So thank you both so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. And I, you know what? I can hear it in your voice, and people listening aren't able to see your face, but I can see it in your face. Like you smiled through this entire hour plus, talking about this stuff. So clearly this is you're someone that we can trust with this stuff, and that you know where we're coming from. And I can feel coming from you this desire it's why you're a health coach now too, right? And helping people through this. So
That's right.
I thank you,
Laura.
and we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you both.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.